Alrighty, so I've got GenerateBlocks and GenerateBlocks Pro installed, and I also went ahead and installed the block navigation plugin. If you've never used it, it is a game changer for Gutenberg. It gives you this little handy, I don't have anything here yet, but as you start adding blocks to a page, it's just a nice user interface to kind of drag, rearrange things. But it's also just a great visual to see what all blocks are on a page. How many layers deep do you have things nested and that kind of thing. So to just come out here, in this video, sorry, let me say what we're doing. In this video, I'm gonna build out a just simple kind of little header hero area. Yeah, let's call it like a hero area, where using the builder of choice, and in this example, we're on the GeneratePress theme, and we're going to use GenerateBlocks to do this. So the free GenerateBlocks plugins are the container, grid, headline, and buttons. It's just those four things. So it's a very lean, minimal builder, but it's really, really powerful. The template library is part of the Pro plugin, which we're not going to use that, but I will do a demonstration of using some of the Pro functionality, like adding animations and that kind of thing, to show how that might add some additional requests and that kind of thing. So starting out with any GenerateBlocks section. So in Divi, this might be called a section. In Kadence, it's called a row block, but in GenerateBlocks, it is a container. So cool thing about GenerateBlocks is that you don't have to do any kind of unnecessary nesting. So if I wanted to go ahead and add their headline block, and let's just say I'm going to use this chunk of text. Now that's way more text than we probably need. How about I will only let me select what I need. We're just going to cut that much. Okay, so this, I'm going to save that to my clipboard. That'll be the amount of text that we actually use. It'll be an H2, and that'll be what we use for, and I'm just going to leave it left aligned just because why not? This kind of format is what we're going to use to test across all these different, Divi, GeneratePress, and Kadence. That kind of layout of, hey, just adding that container and one heading. So let's just rerun this test now so that we can see in the waterfall what is included on the page now. And while we're at it, I can come to the script manager and we can see any miscellaneous things that have been added here. Just have that GenerateBlocks CSS file with an unspecified size. It's not much at all, I can tell you that much. But yeah, that's really all that was added to the page just by putting that GenerateBlocks container and then the headline. And if we come to the waterfall, we see we have a total of 8 requests. Okay, so we went from 7 on our blank GeneratePress install to 8 whenever we just added a container and a headline. So not really. So let me say this, and I just thought of showing you this test as well. So I'm not testing the speed per se. I'm really looking at just resources, total number of assets, and also kind of demonstrating DOM depth. So there's a good little tool called Yellow Lab Tools, if you've not seen that yet in the course so far. But let's just say we pick a big old desktop screen and run through this test. I like how it highlights the DOM depth of a page, which is just really showing how many layers deep do we go? How many different elements are there on a page? And what is the nesting like as you go down? If you've got a page with lots and lots happening, and maybe there's sections with different numbers of columns and everything, you have a greater DOM depth. So as far as DOM complexities go, on this page, there were 106 DOM elements. Okay, if you have a high number of DOM elements, the browser has to do a lot of work, and it slows some things down because there's more to search through and parse, find out how we're going to display it all. And the max depth of the DOM in this example is 12. So the deepest any nesting stuff goes is here, and none of what you actually see here as far as this nesting goes is actually part of what we added. This is referring to some stuff in the sidebar. Okay, so the items in the sidebar are giving some nesting. It's what's showing us some of that nesting like that. All right, so the right sidebar. And then, you know, the author name on the post here, wherever that is. Anyway, so yeah, just wanted to highlight the whole DOM depth thing. I'll bring that up again when we get to the other two, Kadence and Divi. All right, so yeah, lightweight page, adding that stuff just gave me one additional request in GeneratePress. So going to next look at, we'll do Kadence and Kadence Blocks, doing the same kind of thing. Okay, quick one here. So Kadence Blocks installed, also have Kadence Pro installed. But again, just like on the GeneratePress clip a moment ago, we're not using any Pro features yet, maybe in a bit. I do want to highlight a neat thing about Kadence Blocks. You can deactivate any blocks that you know that you're not going to be using, so that, you know, of course, that prevents any of those kinds of resources ending up on your page, so you don't end up making requests for things you don't need. So let's go ahead and do this. So I still have GeneratePress installed on the website. Not entirely sure why I just ran another speed test there, but just to show you in the waterfall what we got going on, because I've not yet added our little section. In this case, it's going to be a Kadence row block. Oh, oops, it's still got that dummy text in there. So yeah, that was a pointless test to do. Okay, so if we look at the page, I've taken the things out of it, but I've not added anything yet. So row, all right, so the row block, row layout. So we said in GenerateBlocks, you can just do a container and then immediately put in your headline, which is a really lean way to go about things, not having to do that additional nesting. But within Kadence and within Divi, they both do this where you've got to kind of identify your row structure, or which is ultimately going to give you how many columns you've got and everything. So some performance folks say, hey, this is an unnecessary layer of nesting that adds to the DOM depth and DOM complexity. But if we're just going with one column as a comparison, then we're not adding anything else here. If we were to compare, of course, like 3 columns inside of a Kadence row block versus the single, you know, column or whatever, no columns in the GeneratePress container, of course, the Kadence deal with 3 columns is going to have a greater DOM depth, and, you know, it's technically a heavier page or whatever when you get to that point. But for what that is worth, let's now, so we're going to use the, Kadence calls it the advanced heading, and again, we're going with an H2 last, ooh, yeah, we're going to blur that out. That was my that was my license key. We're going to go to clipboard, pause. Okay, I snagged the Latin off of my clipboard. Okay, yep, so update the page. This is now, all right, same sample page, same structure of the page, but now just using the Kadence row and Kadence advanced heading to make the block, or to make this, you know, little section here for our test. So yeah, all of these examples, no, we're not using a background image. I think I indicated at one point I might, but yeah, no images. Just go with a simple little test, because all this is really helping demonstrate the whole DOM depth thing. And while that's running, let's actually also grab this URL. We're going to plug it into the Yellow Labs. Ooh, deal again. I don't remember if I hit high definition desktop on the other one or not, but run that out. Waterfall, 8 requests. Okay, so no change there compared to the GeneratePress container option. again, it would be maybe different if we had, 3 columns with, content in the 3 different little columns. But looking at the DOM complexity thing, you see this actually shows DOM count only 90, okay, which I think was lower than in that previous example. Max DOM depth is 13, okay, I think it was 12, correct me if I'm wrong, when you rewatch this, was it 12? I think it was 12, because you see, as far as divs go, so containers, you have the like the addition of things like the column within the Kadence block. So you have like this Kadence row block, and then you have some different things about your column. So you can just appreciate how the nesting stuff goes. Enough of those extra different layers down the page, you add to the complexity of the page. And again, that can start to slow things down. So if you're really trying to build lean websites that don't slow down as much as others, we just want to be aware of the structure of the page as we're building, because as we go with more and more of those columns and nesting things one within the other, if you again can appreciate the nesting here shown in the block navigation plugin. Within the row block, you've got a section, and then you've got the heading. Could have showed this in the container, in the GeneratePress, GenerateBlocks example, where it was just a container, and immediately you had your heading, so you didn't have this kind of section, or Divi calls it a row, plugged in there. But this is where you deal with your number of columns and that kind of thing. Yeah, so moving right along. Oh, and just to show demonstration-wise, if you add an additional column there, how the nesting goes, because then we have, okay, here's a column, and then here's another column, and there could be more content. So how many times can I say nesting in a video? Okay, done here. Now we're going to look at the same kind of setup in Divi, just doing the single little section like we've been doing. Okay, before going to Divi, I did just want to do this. I knew I thought that somebody might point this out. So I went ahead and switched back to the Kadence theme quickly to just recreate that same layout, because this video just prior, the clip just prior, we were on GeneratePress as the theme, and then dropped in the Kadence blocks for the builder. Okay, so now I have reinstalled Kadence. So we've got Kadence with the Kadence theme with Kadence blocks. So I still have the single row, just one column, and the advanced heading with the H2 with that Latin text in there. And just refresh that page, and it looks like this on the front end, sample page. And so I've not rerun GTmetrix yet. So this was the page, sample page, while GeneratePress was still installed. So I'm going to rerun that. While it is running, I did go ahead and refresh the Yellow Labs tool test, and you'll notice the DOM elements count is 102 here, and then max depth 18. So looks like some of these, I'm just looking down the list here to see what I recognize. Mobile toggle open. See, some of that is making me think some of that is like the mobile menu that it's actually checking. So let's make sure we're using the desktop version. Okay, desktop, launch test. So we'll come back to that just to make sure I'm comparing desktop site against desktop site. Yeah, count 102, max depth 18. So still seeming like we may be catching some kind of mobile menu stuff in there for some reason, like the hamburger menu, I think is the mobile toggle there. So for what that's worth, let me go all the way back here. DOM elements max count 102, whereas I think it was like 90 in the GeneratePress example. I could be mixing up my words here, whatever the numbers were. But then, yeah, rerunning the same test, we have 11 requests here now versus the, what was it, 8 with GeneratePress. So using the same kind of layout with the same structure, using Kadence Blocks while on the Kadence theme, when compared to using GeneratePress as the theme, but Kadence Blocks. Okay, so which is actually a combination that I use on my matchless site. Whenever I originally was getting into GeneratePress, I actually got into the GeneratePress theme, and then immediately got into Kadence Blocks. So I didn't get into the Kadence theme right away. I kind of started with their blocks and just added them to my GeneratePress site. And it wasn't until I was a lot more familiar with Kadence Blocks that I eventually got into GenerateBlocks and GenerateBlocks Pro. So just to show it can be certainly a winning combination to use the theme of, GeneratePress and then still use the blocks, and maybe end up and using Kadence Blocks and still end up with a great lightweight site that might just utilize some of those Kadence blocks that may have some pre-built features that you like. So for instance, and this is kind of a tangent, but let's just say I wanted to use one of these pre-made sections. I mean, yeah, if you're a GenerateBlocks user, if you've got the Pro account, they've got their own little design library. And so in the Pro version of Kadence Blocks, you also have their kind of design library where you get some pre-styled sections that you can download, which is a really nice touch. So there's certainly a use case for maybe starting with one or the other as a block plugin, just so that you get some kind of templated layouts that you want to go ahead and use. So side note, but just wanted to demonstrate that difference before moving on to Divi. So now we will switch to Divi. All right, so Divi is now installed as our active theme, and looking at back at our sample page, here's what the front end looks like. So we've got that, no content added yet. I haven't even enabled the Divi builder, but I went ahead and reran the GT metrics just so we could see our waterfall with the 17 requests that we have. Again, that is with the minified and combined CSS and JavaScript options that are turned on by default in Divi. And I went ahead and also ran the Yellow Labs tool just to see the DOM complexity. So before we even add content to the page, we just know max DOM depth of elements. And thus far, I mean, these are some of your header menu, mobile menu items, and then you've got some footer items there. So just wanted to show that before we add any content. Okay, so coming in here, and we're just going with that same idea of, we're going to add what's called in Divi, just a section, and then a row, and then a text module, which we'll put our H2 in. All right, so the section's already been added. Row is what is next, and then text module. Okay, and we're going to use our same, I think I was cutting off the sentence there, so that's our content, and we'll make sure that all of that is the H2. Save. And just to since we're not in a Gutenberg theme, we're not seeing of course the Gutenberg UI on the right hand side of the page with the block navigation plugin. So we're just kind of seeing our page structure using the wireframe view here. So we have our section, and then the row, and then the actual module. So with those three pieces in place, I think I already hit save. Does anybody else just click save, like a maniac, just every so many seconds, just in case you haven't? Me neither. Okay, refresh. There's that content on the page. I'm going to rerun GT metrics, rerun Yellow Lab tools. All right, So we had 17 requests on the page with just the default Divi, no content on the page. So we'll see what our total requests look like here now. All right, so it's still 17 requests on the page, so nothing seemed to change there. How interesting. Wait, not really. Never mind. I was getting numbers backwards. Okay, DOM, max depth 14. So it increases, right? All right, so we have our section. Okay, and then we have our Divi row, and then we have the Divi column structure, which we just have a, no columns or whatever, a single column. And then we have the module of the text, and then the actual content of the text on the inside. So again, all of this that we've done thus far is just to help us, again, appreciate and understand how with the more and more complexity of our page, the more and more levels deep we start nesting things, things get crazy. Okay, we can really start doing some things that can slow down our page just the way that we're building it. And this can happen whether you're in Divi or if you're in, GeneratePress using GenerateBlocks, trying to do the leanest thing possible. If you really start nesting things, it just can get out of control. So I'm just going to really just, I don't know, odd example, extreme example. Maybe it's not extreme, but let's just say we had one section where we kept adding rows and kept adding rows. Let's say that in one particular section we had 4 columns. Oops. Actually wanted to do this. But let's just get a couple of extra bits of content on the page. Just to show, well, if I could get it to, come on, self, you can do this. The people are watching. Why can't I make the thing stay? Oh, there it is. Okay, one more time. Just to show us, like, okay, several layers deep. Let's say we also had, I don't know, there's another row here, and it has an image, and we can just go on and on, nesting and nesting, adding more things within more things. But even just making some of those changes, adding additional rows with additional columns, different kinds of module nested within a row. Could have just come here to make some of this easier on myself, but all the dragging around. Let's just run this again, and then one more time, and then we're going to be done with this kind of example. But all this just makes you think about what is the structure of my pages? How can I make it a little more easy for my pages to be parsed by the browser by preventing having excessive DOM depth and excessive nesting? Could there be a more simple page structure that could be used to get the same kind of layout, just with less complexity? So still same number of requests, and still max depth is the same, but of course DOM element count has gone up. So we didn't go any further down in our nesting in that example, actually. We just added more elements to the DOM. So had I placed a lot of things within other things, and just kind of kept going down the rabbit hole of one thing inside of another thing inside of another thing, maybe that would have been a more extreme example. But as we add content to the page, more things are added. The end.